We need to be wary of that one.
Totally. It can also look like little white lies.
I think looking into 2025, many of us are like, oh, it's almost that fear of what's next.
Hello, 2025. We're continuing our series to get us all prepped and centered for this new year. Today, we're talking numerology and intuitive insights with one of our go-to seeking center guides, Rebecca, also known as Akashic Bec. As her name alludes to, she's a clear channel of the Akashic Records, and Bec is also a numerologist and an intuitive, as well as certified in several other powerful spiritual modalities. What is the numerology for 2025, and how might that impact you? What intuitive insights does Bec have to share? You don't want to miss this conversation. Hi, Bec.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, are you kidding?
Cannot wait to hear what you have to say about what is coming.
There's so much.
There's always so much. That's the joy of all of this. We've talked about numerology before. Can you give us just a brief overview of what numerology is and how it all works?
Sure, I'll do my best. As you may guess, numerology is the study of numbers, but it's actually more than that. It's the metaphysical properties, the numerological sequences, the vibration cycles and patterns of numbers. And much like astrology, it's used as a tool of prediction based on the information provided. So you think of numbers as like planets and asteroids. And how they all intertwine, how they work together, how they repel each other, etc.
I love the way you put that, because I don't think people realize how similar in terms of like how you can use it, just like we do use astrology. You can use numerology in the same way. And there are numbers in everything.
Yes.
Words have numbers.
Yes, I often call it the language of the universe. Numbers actually predate letters. So we wouldn't have an alphabet without numbers.
Oh, wow.
That's right. I think you've said this, and I know if people are interested, we will put the podcast where we talked more in depth about numerology. But I think you said in that podcast episode that it is older than astrology. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ancient civilizations have looked at numbers. They may not have written them, of course, the way that we have, but yes, they worked with numbers before they worked with letters.
I think it's so fascinating.
So just for people listening and watching then, numerology, if they're not familiar with it, can be as personal as astrology. So it's like another layer that people can explore to learn more about themselves and the world around us.
Yes, absolutely. Numbers have personalities and meanings, just like we were talking about astrology, like planets do. And it's just about learning what your particular sequence is and how the energies at play affect your personal numbers and what that might look like.
Just so much to know there. So we're going to start.
That's right.
Absolutely.
What is 2025 from a numerology perspective?
Okay, we are going to be entering into a universal year 9.
How did you get that?
So we find this number by adding each individual number of the year together and then reducing it to a single digit, but we don't have to reduce in this instance. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9.
And what does a universal year mean? And then I feel like 9 is a big deal. What does that mean from a universal year perspective?
Okay, so we have universal years, months, and days, and then we have personal years, months, and days. So the universal energy is what affects all of us as a collective. It's like world themes. So this plays out on the world stage. It can influence or affect a lot of people. It could be the world. It could be a country. It could be just a place where there is a large community of people.
Then there's also a karmic number, right? So what is it from a karmic number?
Technically, 9 is not considered a karmic number. However, I personally disagree with that. I think all of the numbers carry some semblance of karma within them, just like people do. But to that end, 9 is such an interesting number in that everything in math, everything added to 9 equals itself. And so it is the most mirroring number of all of the other numbers. Because of that, it has traits of the karmic numbers that are already there. So 4 and 8 are karmic numbers. We are wrapping up a universal year 8. And so we may even see themes because the numbers on either side of a universal year do affect it on some level. But at least for the first few months of 2025, we might still see little trickles of a universal year, and it'll be mirroring that back to us. So anything that you didn't maybe wrap up might still be playing out on some level and closing out the first quarter of 2025.
And for all of us who are looking at the first quarter, maybe with a little bit of uncertainty, it's a good thing to remember. So as we're listening to the significance of what 9 is, there still is a bit of leftover from 8 that could be influencing. And that's on the world stage as well as in our own.
Yes, because there's no hard line. When it turns 2025, like we still have waves of that previous influence coming in. And technically, since we've been talking about astrology, the actual year doesn't start until Aries season. So as you move into the thick of the year, it'll have less and less influence. It'll be able to be in its own energy all by itself.
That makes sense.
So just for those of us who are looking at the 8, so how is the 8 different from the 9? Is there a different energy?
Absolutely, yes. And I will say that all of the numbers have their own core. They have their own meanings and things like that, but there's also overlap. Some of the other numbers reflect within each other. They might embrace certain ideas, certain energies that are similar. And 8 and 9 being right there at the end of that number line, they have a lot to do with expansion. They have a lot to do with reward for hard work and sacrifice. And they also have a lot to do with achievement.
That makes sense.
So 8 and 9 deals with having achieved something. It's like stepping into a place of authority and stepping into your power. 8 is the number of power, and that's more on an individual level. 9 is like power to the people.
Oh, wow. Can I ask this too, from a numerology perspective? Is 9 the highest number? Does it then start back over at 0?
It can, but it can also move into the master numbers.
Okay. So then
like 11, 22, 33.
Okay. Got it. But for 2025, it's 9.
9, period.
Yes, 9, period. That's really interesting, though, that it's 8 and 9. We have expansion and achievement. Those words, I think, are really important and make a lot of sense collectively how we feel overall. Let's see where we're going to achieve.
And it's a good reminder too. I love what you said about power to the people, but just empowerment in general. We may not feel as empowered going into 2025 as last year. It is up to us. And so empowerment can be available to us, but we have to step into that in order to really fulfill that. It's a good reminder going into this year.
Yeah,
absolutely. I had this image of somebody holding a candle and then lighting other people's candles. Mm-hmm. So maybe taking that empowerment, taking your light and sharing it with the people around you so it can catch on.
What else do we need to know about 9 and the potentiality in numerology for 2025?
So I'm going to dive in here because I have a lot of notes. But as I mentioned, 9 represents reflection because everything added to 9 equals itself. So there's this mirroring energy and it embodies traits of all the other numbers. It helps us realize our identity is made up of experiences, and these experiences make up our wisdom and perception. It's a deep understanding of what is happening around us. And so, as I mentioned, it represents reflection in that we may be looking back to the past for our lessons or lessons from the past coming back up for us to address. And we've endured this 9-year cycle. And if we can evolve from it, it can bring us great rewards. So there's that 8 and 9 energy. 9 also represents memory. So not only our thoughts, but the memories we hold within our spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional body. So spiritually, it can represent a broad understanding of the nature of the universe. And it can also represent intense psychic abilities that have been honed throughout lifetimes. So you may have talents, gifts, whatever you want to call it, from previous lifetimes being activated this coming year, which might be really exciting for some people. But positively, 9 can be a time of harvest. So there's that culmination energy that we were talking about, where we reap the rewards of our past generosity and kindness, our hard work, and our sacrifice. Largely, it represents a time of letting go and surrender in order for something new to come. So there is this aspect of closing out or something coming to an end, but I don't want that to feel sad, because that means that something is going to replace that. So this can also look like getting rid of old habits, mindsets, ways of being, ushering those out because there's no need for them anymore. Right? We're in this whole new realm, and that's where the expansion comes in. If we're able to rid ourselves, let go of some of these things, we can expand within ourselves, right? And adopt a new way of life, a new way of being. So the 9th chakra, and all of this is relevant. It all ties in together. The 9th chakra is the soul star chakra, and that connects us to our higher purpose. It also connects us to our higher realms, and it puts us in tune with our ancestors, both earthly and cosmic. This coming year is going to be a really big year for connecting with this ancestral energy that lies within all of us. A similar theme of 8 and 9 is buried information coming to the surface. And we will use this information as a catalyst for creating our future. And since our year ends in the number 5, which represents change, exploration, and adventure, I feel like there will be significant ancient findings in the world or ancient knowledge that will be made available to the public. It also can represent reigns, leadership, and legacy coming to an end or changing in some way. So maybe having a new leader or changing from one aspect of government to another. And what I find interesting about 9 is it is the most humanitarian number of all the numbers. Huh. It sees a need and it wants to fill it by using what's available. So 9 has this like jack of all trades energy. It's good at a little bit of everything since it embodies all of the numbers, right? And astrologically, we know that Pluto moved into Aquarius. I'm sure you heard a lot about that in recent months.
Yes.
Or maybe this whole year. And Aquarius is actually the most humanitarian sign of the zodiac. So I feel like there would be this shift in the collective about taking care of the needs of the people rather than a handful of privileged folks. At least that's what I'm hoping. But unity consciousness will also likely become stronger. And since we're still speaking on astrology, 9 rules the planet Mars. Okay. So this is very like action-oriented, assertive number. And I just don't see us sitting on our hands a lot this year. I see us doing things. I see us going out, helping people, getting involved, asserting ourselves into situations so that people can have a leg to stand on, going to places and just making a difference, like really shifting things in a big way. And this is all actually supported by the year numbers, so 2, 0, and 5. So we must practice patience and understanding with others this year if we want to have a successful one. So you think about Mars is not very patient. It doesn't like to wait around. But if you practice patience, you will absolutely gain your blessings, gain your wings this year. And intuitively, I got an intuitive message around this. I heard we may need to slow down and be in the present moment occasionally while we're in the midst of doing all of this action-oriented work. I feel like that will help us realign with the purpose. Like, why are we doing this? What direction do we need to go? What can we do next?
Which to me ties so much into what you were also talking about with reflecting and connecting in with ancestors on a deeper level than you may even realize. But if you're able to be present and tap into that, then you'll be able to hopefully make a bigger impact because of all that energy.
Exactly. So you're working smarter, not harder, and you're working mindfully instead of unmindfully.
Yeah.
So 9 also has themes, and this is what Karen, you and I were talking about around closings, endings, and fulfillment. And I feel like there will be certain chapters in the world that will need to be closed out of necessity. And we've seen a lot of power struggles this year with that 8 energy. That's the shadow side of 8, right? We've had power struggles, shakeups, and sensationalized stories. But what will motivate us next year is just to see the improvement and the basic human needs being fulfilled. So the shadow side of 9, I did want to talk about the less desirable aspects of 9 because there's duality and everything. So it can look like being paralyzed by indecision, being apathetic, impulsive, making things needlessly complicated.
Yes.
You're like, I felt that one in my soul.
We need to be wary of that one.
Yes, totally. It can also look like little white lies, the fear of disappointing others or codependency, making promises that can't be kept, and unexpected endings. With all that in mind, we could probably avoid a lot of disappointments and endings if we just spoke our truth. If we got past that fear and that need to please everyone or seem a certain way and just simplifying things. So this is a year we need to really learn how to be adaptable and stop resisting what needs to happen to evolve, because what you resist persists, right?
Yeah.
So the lesson of 9 can be to tie up loose ends before that chapter closes out. So be aware of impulsive behavior that could lead to accidents that could absolutely be avoided. And much the numbers 3 and 6, 9, I'm moving on to something more positive again. 3 and 6. 9 is also this creative visionary energy. So we may be seeing a lot of artists. I feel like, I don't know why, but I felt like it was music, especially taking us into this unexplored territory and just really blowing our minds with maybe a new style, a new format, a new way of listening to music. And people stepping forward with unique, innovative ideas that could help the collective at large. This could also change the landscape of things and creative industries, as I mentioned, like music, art, and design. 3, just like 3, 9 relishes in more abstract ideas, but also making them practical. It's a really unique energy in that way. It can totally up level everything, you know? And in tarot, I want to talk about tarot for just a moment. 9 represents the Hermit card, which is about wisdom, achievement, and attainment, as we mentioned. Wow. And if you recall the Hermit card, it's the Hermit is holding a lantern, and that is representative of the lantern of knowledge, and how important it is to pass that knowledge on to others. Otherwise, it is meaningless and shallow. It's important that we move forward with sharing what we know, like sharing our heart, sharing ancestral wisdom, sharing new and old ways of doing things. That's also innovative energy, right?
Yes. And I think even when you were talking about visionaries and potentially music being a big part of it, we know the power of music and frequency.
Exactly.
And so being a unifier to me is
something really beautiful there.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense in, again, tying in with this number.
And it absolutely is universal energy for real. And so I feel like it'll be something that speaks to all of us, even if we don't want to admit it, or even if it's not our favorite, it'll still like touch a part of us somewhere.
Yeah, that is the power of music, isn't it? You don't really have to do anything. You just have to absorb it. And it has this incredible ability to just shift emotion without any effort at all. So I love that from even an individual perspective, but the collective, I can really see that being very powerful.
Absolutely.
So much here to absorb, but that feels so powerful. Like, I think looking into 2025, I think many of us are like, oh, it's almost that fear of what's next. And I think what you've done is given us this perspective of the potentiality of the year and the things that we can really let go of and the impact it can have on the collective. Particularly, I love that idea of from the humanity aspect, that if we really step into the trueness of ourselves, that we have such power to be able to influence that in a positive way. And for anybody, this is a time of year when so many of us, I think, do that inventory of what do I want to let go of? Where do I really want to be? How can I have an impact, seriously, on the world? Even if it's a small thing, what can it be? And so 9 just seems to be that open opportunity to really let that flower and grow this year.
And when you were talking about the shadow side, what I think is so interesting as well is you talked about some buried information that may come to the surface. And I know when we've talked to Stevie, who I know you are familiar with, one of our go-to astrologers, she has talked about that being a theme in general as well, really starting from 2024 and going forward. So she really talked, I want to say, that things coming, and it's interesting that you brought March up, because I know March, she mentioned, was a time for certain things potentially to be revealed. And it really aligns. We love it when these modalities, right? It's just so validating for all of us, which is why we do what we're doing. Really, we're talking to you from a numerology perspective as well as an intuitive perspective. We're talking to Stevie as well. We're talking to Michelle Nolan from a tarot perspective. And what we know is that there's always synergies in these. And we're really helping others who are listening right now or watching see it and hear it as well. It's so cool. It shows you how on purpose all of this is, all of this energy, what we're all feeling. And that's why we can talk about it on this collective level. And then we can help everybody listening or watching also look into this for themselves on a personal level, but it's all related.
Absolutely.
Why do I feel there's aliens coming? I don't know. All the stuff
Beam us up.
Yeah, all that buried information coming to the surface. Maybe they'll bring the new music in with them. It'll all be this big.
Right. They're going to come in with some sick beats.
Yeah, Karen's calling that right now. In 2025, Karen's calling. Let's make note of it.
You were talking about change and adventure. Maybe we take off with them and explore. There's so much. All new humanity aspects.
I love it so much. Karen's what if?
Go big.
I'm going to do a sign up genius.
That's right. That's right. Wow. You just gave us a lot to think about. And also both from that achievement level, but also that reflection. And again, looking at things on that collective level of where have we been? Where are we going? Which also, again, goes back to that getting yourself to be present so that you can do all the reflecting.
I also feel for those who may be feeling like it is time for a new chapter. This is such a great time to consider that. And you'll be so supportive from a numerology perspective. Just really thinking about, okay, maybe I've been doing that job for a long time, or I've been living in this place for a while, but it might really be time to step into that next decade or that next chapter for life and really embrace what that could potentially be. And if you haven't maybe even been honest with yourself about who you really want to be, of having the courage to at least look at potentially what that could be. And I love the idea of it could serve you from a humanity perspective. Like, how can we serve? How can we go into this next phase of time, really giving of ourselves, and all of this support really helping us as we step into that? It's really fun to think about.
It's really exciting. And like I said, are very pivotal years in the time of humanity. 2027 is going to be a very dynamic shift for all of us. And so this year, next year, and 2026 is going to be this, I would say, amplification energy that we're looking at. And we're not going to be the same on the other side of it in a good way. It's all up to you. It's your choice.
Yeah. And I think you gave us some really good watch outs too, in terms of the flip side of the 9, which is, listen, whenever we're thinking about doing something new or taking on something else, you can be paralyzed by fear and all those things. And it's a universal, go ahead, just jump into it feeling, and to try what feels like in our soul is the right thing to do.
And I also love the visual that you gave of having somebody lighting other people's candles, right? We can do that. We can all be that. It takes nothing from us to light somebody else up. It only makes us more full of light. And then everybody becomes more full of light. So if you can keep that visual in your mind of how do I even energetically light someone else up, then you are really carrying on that work for the collective and contributing your part, which again, it only helps your light shine brighter when you help other people shine. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind.
So can we talk about, now that we've gotten the universal year, how do we calculate that layer for ourselves, which is that personal year number for 2020?
I'm so glad you asked. I have an answer for you. Okay, so to calculate your personal year, you add your month and your day of birth to the universal year. If you have a master number 11, 22, or 33 in your birth date, you do not reduce that number. So for example, let's say your birthday is March the 5th. I just picked a random day. So you add 3 plus 5, which is 8, to 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, which is 17. And then you reduce it, 1 plus 7 equals 8. So you would have an 8 personal year in 2025.
And so we can look up for ourselves what a personal year would look like and all the associated traits with that, and then layer that on all the insights that we're getting on 25.
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, nowadays, not back when I started doing numerology, but nowadays there's all kinds of information online about this stuff. There's all kinds of books available now. It's really lovely.
It just shows you how people are so interested in this information and how helpful it can be. And then I know we won't even have to go into it, but I know that you can even go into a universal month for yourself, right?
Yes. So you have personal years, personal months, and personal days. And there's universal years, universal months, universal days.
And then would you suggest if someone figures out what their personal year number is, and we now obviously know the universal year, do you then figure out how do they work together? Is that how someone can use that?
Yes, absolutely. So once you start to understand the individual meanings of the numbers, you can start to see like how they meld together. And this is where you can use your intuition on this and say, I could see how this would pertain, and break it down from there. Also, know not to just like totally tie yourself to a generalization. You know what I mean? Like it could go a multitude of ways because the future is being created in every moment, right? So there are different facets, but you can just look at the overall meaning of the number and then pair it with the other number and see how do they have commonalities? Is there an energy that repels? Does it work together? Does it harmonize really well? And just base it off of the conditions and the situations that are happening around you. Yeah. So I say start within and then work your way out, you know?
And how can people use this knowledge to really help them make certain decisions or align with their intentions for the new year?
So taking these numbers and mapping out your personal year and then mapping out the personal months of the year and then correlating it, adding the universal years and the universal months with that. I feel like that'll help you steer in the right direction. Like I'm seeing a steering wheel. I feel like it's not going to be a straight line, but it'll help you to know, okay, this month it looks like I really need to go inward. I need to reflect. Let's say you're having a 9 personal month in the 9 universal year. You may say, okay, I need to reflect. I need to finish up this project. I need to cut ties with this person that is toxic and is not bringing anything into my life and it's not fostering growth. Or maybe you're having a 1 personal year or personal month and looking at it from the 9 perspective, they're on each end of the number line, right? So it's really get down and look at the details on things before you start something, because otherwise you might cut corners, you might trip yourself up, you might get started prematurely, and that brings in a whole host of problems. So save yourself the headache. That's something that numerology can help you do. It's not going to give you a definitive answer, but it's going to let you know what the energies are swirling within that specific time frame.
Yeah. And so you can either have energy that's supporting, or you can know that all energy, obviously, we want it to be supporting. You want to just use it in the right way, let's say, throughout the year.
Right.
It's very much like astrology too, right? It's a guide for influences, the energy that is around you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to mandate anything specific, but if you're looking to interview for a new job, it can help guide you on days when the energy might be really nurturing and supportive for that versus the day where it might be better just to hunker down and do some introspection versus.
Exactly.
I have a question, Bec. Do you do this for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All the time.
My mom used to get very hypervigilant about it. She used to get down to, is today a good day to have surgery? She would get down to that level of things. I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but back to this being an ancient art, it was definitely used this way, right? Should the battle start on this day or should it start on that day? So I think when you get into sort of this collective energy, it does make so much sense because you can really you can feel it. You can almost see it in the news on some days that the world is really just reacting to all of this. So I just love that it just helps you make sense sometimes of the crazy things that are.
Yes, it can be a grounding force and it can give you this platform to operate in.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Which in this world, there's so much information, I think, coming at us on any given day, at any given moment. Having something to help ground you is really important. And obviously, there's all different practices that we talk about all the time. And this is a very tangible one. It really is. And once you understand it, you can really use it in so many different aspects. We talk about numerology all the time with Seeking Center as an entity, which we've had a whole episode about. We also talked about with any name of anything, right? Like you can really break any of it down and get the energy associated because of the numbers. And so that's why we find this so important.
Addresses, I think we talked about that.
Exactly.
Where your home is and the address, the number that's associated
Yes.
with it. It can be just really great fun to think about the impact there.
From an intuitive perspective, any themes or shifts that you are receiving messages for 2025?
Okay, so, and this is not to frighten anyone, but one of the words that I kept hearing when I was thinking about 25 is collapse. So I'm seeing a shift with like large structures that start, I feel like it started this year and it's going to continue over time, but large structures needing just a complete overhaul, leadership changing significantly, and having this inner desire for individual sovereignty. Those were the themes that I tapped into. Even if people are not fully cognitively aware of it, they have this stirring going on inside of them. So having reached the end of this 9-year cycle and being like, all of this happened for a reason. Seeing, okay, a big topic that people like to talk about is 2020 and like how significant that time was. When like 2020, 2021 were like the middle of that cycle. And now we're on, I guess, this other side of it in a sense, and realizing the world is not the same. And what can the world look like going forward? I feel like there's going to be a lot of like blueprint energy, like creating something and taking what we've learned from the last decade and applying it going forward, and realizing that we had a lot of limitations this cycle, and maybe realizing that it made us realize we aren't limited, that we are infinite and we are creative and we are resourceful, and we can take all of those lessons and apply them going forward. And really thinking, as I mentioned with the innovation, thinking outside the box and realizing that there is so much more that we could be doing with our energy and our time. And now we have a stronger sense of self because of it. So it wasn't all for nothing.
I love looking at it that way. I feel like, to your point of looking at 2020 and 21 as the middle of this cycle, makes so much sense. And here we are reflecting back, and we are not, none of us and generations going forward will not be the same because of this. As you said, it's this much bigger shift and change.
When you look back, think about how much the world has changed in so many ways. And I was just thinking when you were talking about sovereignty, about how so many now are wanting to go and live on the land and grow their own food and just have a different type of lifestyle that's not dependent on the greater pipeline of things, right? Of really having that transparency into their own lives and how they're living them, really, and having the power over that. And it's really interesting. It's really freeing. And it makes me feel like so much of the world is going back to its roots, going back to who we really
ancient energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also, there's that. And I also think that there's this aspect of we don't have to do things just because, or the way that they were, or the way they've been done for decades. When you talk about collapse, to me, that's what I think about, is like innovation in the sense of let's do things that have never been done before, and really looking at things differently, whether we use technology in the most responsible and efficient way. We can use technology in that way, as well as going back to the land so that we're not so dependent only on technology. It's using it, connecting ourselves to everyone who's listening and watching, and in ways that we've not thought about before, but also getting back to that grounding into those roots. And I think the time of 2020 and 2021, there was so much of that allowing, even though in some ways, in quotes, we were forced to get present at times, right? Because we couldn't do our normal routine and then look at that normal routine and go, is this really serving all of us in the best way possible? And are we just taking certain things and information for granted? Do we need to really look and do some more research on all things? So there's a lot there.
It's really that seeker mentality, I think, is what came out of it. I think we've talked about for so many generations, really, nobody really had that freedom to be a seeker because life was thrust upon you. And so now this time has really given us that opportunity for the world to really open up and for us to make those choices of why are we really here and what does call us to be here. So it's great to have all these tools back.
And questioning just everything. Why are you here? What is really fulfilling for you? Give yourself permission to ask those questions for yourself. And I think that's what this year and the energy can do for you.
Having numerology, having our own intuition, having tarot, all these things, that's why we love them so much because it helps guide us along these paths. So talk now about Akashic Records and how those can help influence not only the numerology, but all these other things we've been talking about as guidance as we move into this new 2025 year.
For sure. Future-oriented questions are tricky when you're talking about the records because the future is being created in every moment. So there's no definitive way to know what's going to happen necessarily. However, I think numerology can help us encompass a multitude of possibility. So within the scope of the numbers, and in other words, we can hold the potential within them and they can express themselves in various ways. And then you take your intuitiveness with the records and you start to weave a picture for yourself. And I think a big misconception is that we have no control over our fate and our destiny. And that's not true. We can make it look however we want to. And so whenever we're talking about reading the records and what all of that looks like and how things are going to unfold, we can take the knowledge of the self, we can take the soul's essence, and we can apply it to whatever numerological month we happen to be in or time or space we happen to be in.
So I'm just thinking about this for a second then. So depending on when you go into the records and the year energetically and the month and the day energetically, it's like you're almost like tapping into a certain page in the book of the records.
Essentially, yes.
Right? It can always shift. So to your point, every time you tune in energetically, it's always continue to shift, right?
Yes.
So explain your comment though about how we can control that. What do you mean by that? How can we control what's in our own fate from a numerology and Akashic Records perspective?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So I think this is where alignment comes in. So choosing to be in alignment, choosing sovereignty, deprogramming, defragging yourself with all of the projections and everything that is tied to you that you collect and gather throughout your lifetime and just by being a part of this world. And having that desire and that intention to operate within that certain frequency, I think that will align you more with the kind of destiny and the kind of life, the kind of story that you're wanting to weave.
I love that because I think sometimes I get confused with like how important is intention versus me actually being in the moment and being present where I am, where we know all that power is energetic. Things to happen. It's a combination of the two, but allowing them to unfold easily, right? And not being so tied to, I want to be here and I want to be doing
right.
That I'm just not allowing myself to even live in the moment and really be energetically where I am. And so I just think it's always a challenge because we're always trying to figure out how to balance that out in the best interest of ourselves. The power is always in the present, which I think we often forget.
Yes, because that's where the shifting occurs, right? It's not happening next to us, it's happening right here.
I think that's a really good point, Karen, because what's the fine line between having intention and goals and that idea of manifesting certain things, but then the allowing? What is that fine line, would you say?
I would say that within their scope of manifestation, say this or better.
I love that.
So I think the fine line is the allowing. And it's also about trusting, wanting a perfect partner and having a list of all of their ideal qualities. You have to really know thyself. If you want somebody that is aligned with you, you have to be aligned. And so getting deep into that, like Karen was saying, that now moment, that present moment, and building upon that.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. And I think that's one example, right? But you can apply that to so many other things that people think they need in order to be fulfilled. Your point in being aligned with who you are first is the most important. And then that allowing of, and it's like, of course, have your dreams, of course, have goals, and also keep things open enough to allow them to unfold in their own way.
Exactly.
I keep thinking of that, the explorers, when they're out there in the middle of the ocean, they charted their course to like the British Virgin Islands or wherever it was, right? Because they wanted to get the rum and whatever specialties of the island. And they were like, we're going there. But then they could have missed the whole United States, right?
Because that's right. Exactly. And that's important to talk about at the beginning of a year, because a lot of people set certain intentions for a year. For some person, it might be a partner. Another person, it might be a job. Who knows what it is? But the point is, it's okay to set the goal, set the intention, and then get to know yourself better.
Like your one-liner about that or better is always a great call out to the universe for the job, for the home, whatever it is that you're looking for.
I'm going to put that on a Post-it. I have all my different mantras. That's going up there because that's really simple and so true.
And people, we're all imaginative and we can consider all of the factors, but how it unfolds, that is truly up to us in a way. It's up to our internal life. It's up to our frequency. It's up to our free will choices.
Yes, that's right. And speaking of intentions and goals, what are some of the most common questions or concerns that people come to you with at the beginning of a new year?
I really don't have a common theme among clients when it comes to the beginning of the year, but I guess what I hear the most is next year going to be better than this year. No, I don't know. It's up to you, you know?
So funny.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about how the year begins during Aries season. So I actually get a lot more people wanting to know things around that time of year, like what's ahead.
And in many ways, for those listening, Aries season is in March. And it makes sense when you think about it, because we're basing this on this calendar year that we all seem to abide by. And that's not necessarily the most natural of things. However, we do that from an institutional perspective. So when you enter in January, a lot of us are just like gliding in, but then you really by March are like, wait, okay, now what? So there is that kind of practical thing that happens aligning with the real energy from an astrological perspective.
And I like what you were saying too earlier. It's so conducive to waiting till Aries season. This 9 years is about the harvest. It's about getting ready to clear and plant new things. So it really does perfectly align for taking that first quarter of the year and get rid of the 8s and start.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, because you don't have that extra influence in there anymore, really.
Exactly.
What are 3 simple steps that someone can take to start incorporating some numerology or intuitive practices into their daily life?
So I would say, first off, remember that you are multifaceted, multi-talented, and multi-dimensional, and you're not limited to the generalization of a number meaning or a reading or anything like that. Secondly, don't be anxious. People start overthinking things when they're on a quest of understanding, and they're hard on themselves, and it makes you frustrated. It makes you want to give up. So just trust the process and try not to be anxious. And just remember that if you're committed to your path, you will find a way. And third, don't compare yourself to others. Everyone is somewhere, and you're exactly where you need to be. And this is not a contest. I asked Spirit about this once, and they showed me a piece of paper with dots, evenly spaced dots. And when you turn the paper up, it showed the different levels. And it doesn't matter. Everybody's somewhere. We're just dots on the paper. It's not a contest.
It's so helpful. And I try to remind myself all the time, the comparison one is we have the earthly rule book that we're following. And I'm pretty sure once we cross over on the other side, we're going to be like, oh, we had it all wrong.
Oh, yes.
All of the shoulds, all of the things. And that's why that comparison thing is a really important one, because it's really not about any of that. It's about us doing our best to follow our own path. And we can't get it wrong as long as we're doing it to the best of our ability. And just, as you said, take the pressure off yourself and just look at the new year as an opportunity for all the new possibilities. That's all it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're all guilty of it. And anybody that says that they're not is lying. It's just human nature. Don't beat yourself up for being human.
And don't also discount your own intuitive knowing, which is really your feeling, that gut instinct. Follow that. Remember, I would say to people listening to this episode, really, we're at the beginning of 2025. You are powerful. That's what you're hearing in this whole episode. You have so much more power than you realize, and you're much more intuitive than you realize, even if you don't call yourself that. So follow that. And when you are feeling a certain way and comparing yourself to someone else, remember that you are important because you're here just by being born. We forget that. We really do. It's easy in this crazy, busy world to forget your own light, your own power. And if nothing else, remember that. That is the 9-year. So,
And I also think people who might be unsure of what to do and feeling, I feel like I might want to go here, but I'm really not sure. All of these tools, the numerology, all of it help give you those clues of,
yes,
you're not
they're
sure
like breadcrumbs.
Look at some of these things about the year, the things that you can let go of, the things that, you might want to lean into for the sake of humanity. Those are like you're right, the breadcrumbs that you can look at to try little steps to get you on a direction.
Yeah. And on that note, Bec, is there anything that you would recommend that someone can do this year to start to incorporate any type of spiritual practice or really starting to trust themselves more in this year?
Yes. So this actually aligns with the 9 universal year. So I just took themes and essences from that and applied it to your question. So I'm a big believer in spiritual hygiene, and we're exposed to unsavory energies on a daily basis. My first suggestion would be to have a consistent spiritual hygiene practice. So make time for cleansing yourself and your space regularly. This is also a foundation of developing a relationship with your own energy, which also helps you build your intuition, right? So it is actually a very significant part of that journey. This can look any which way. You can start by meditation. A lot of people are big about meditation these days, which that is connecting to a higher version of self. Exercise, journaling, listening to healing frequencies, taking spiritual baths, smoke cleansing, grounding, etc., etc. As I mentioned, this can actually help you align because it's like removing these extra energies that are not you, not a part of you. And it gives you just a clearer picture of what's going on. I would also recommend doing a deep cleanse of your space. So this can look like actually cleaning. If you've been needing to take things to the Goodwill or whatever, now would be a good time. 2025 would be a great time. And you can also incorporate healing modality within that. So for example, you can use healing frequencies to cleanse your space, cleanse the energy of your space. You can use things like Florida water. You can put that in your laundry or in your mop water. You can cleanse the floor. You say Florida water, yes.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, really?
I have to go to Florida and get
tell us what that is.
I could do a whole thing on that. But Florida water it's a type of, it was perfume, And it's got a lot of natural essences in it, like clove and orange and things like that. You can even make your own Florida water, and it cleanses the energy of the space based off of the type of herbs that are used within it. And you can also use their sage water, rosemary water. There's all different types of things that you can use to cleanse your space other than that. The sky's the limit, really. It also has a lot to do with your intentions, but I think that's another podcast for another day. You can also do things like place selenite above your doorways. You can ring a bell in the corners of your room or clap in the corners of your room. All of these things can help you to cleanse the energy of your space. And I would say the last one, as I mentioned, this ties into the 9 universal year. Do a forgiveness practice.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, because in order for us to move on, we have to forgive the past, right? We have to honor what has happened and the people that participated in whatever that was. So one of the things I like to suggest to people is Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian prayer of forgiveness. It's a very simple prayer, and it's a powerful way to forgive. Ask for forgiveness, and not just for other people, but for yourself.
Yes, I love that. We've talked about that on the podcast a long time ago. And it's simple, but so powerful. And I also wanted to bring up, actually, when you talked about just clearing of other people's energies, what people, I think, listening and watching don't necessarily realize on a daily basis is just being around anybody. You could be on the subway, you could be in a meeting, you can be in the grocery store. And you can be picking up other people's energies that aren't so great. Like they may be having a really shitty day and you're picking up their shitty energy and you don't even realize it. And some of us are more open than others. And think about if you've never done this before, where you've cleared yourself or your space, you're picking all that up all the time. So it's really important. I think this suggestion of spiritual hygiene is easy. It can be free. It's all the things. And it really actually can transform your own energy on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's part of that. I keep seeing the backpack that we're wearing of all the rocks, of all those things.
Here you go.
All the regret, the anger, all those things that we're putting in there that we're carrying around that are weighing us down, that really we don't need to do anymore. And we can put those down. So as we're releasing those things, as you were saying earlier, back about all those things that we can release, going from the 8 into the 9, that's a really powerful one. And you can even use rocks as an analogy too. You can actually take a rock,
right,
name it, and literally drop it and release it. Because I think so many of us carry that stuff around, like you were saying too, Robin. Like we don't even know how much is in there.
No, we really
don't. So it's a really good way to free yourself up, which now feels so exciting.
It does. It does.
Right.
So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all of this insight that will help us individually plan for this upcoming year and make the most of it. And also really have a better understanding when things do come to light, personally and collectively. You have this grounding now.
The macro and the micro, right?
Yes. And I'm sure everybody listening or watching right now is going to go figure out their personal number and then go look it up.
Yes, I do hope you will. That would be great.
Do you have a specific website or anything that you suggest for that, for looking up any sort of numerology type of information?
Yes. One of my absolute favorite numerologists of all time is Christine de Leroy. And she's an author, and she's been doing numerology forever and a day. She's wonderful. And then, of course, there's numerology.com, but I recommend Christine the most. I have followed her for decades.
Wonderful.
And then we're going to tell everybody that what they really should do is book a session with you and either
I would be honored.
an intuitive numerology reading with you or an Akashic Records reading with you. So to really find out more about working with Bec, visit akashicbec.com. And you can also follow her at Akashic_Bec, and that's BEC on Instagram. And we'll also list the other podcasts that Bec has been on, and we know she'll be on more in 2025. And I think, though, what we're walking away today in January of 2025 with is just a bit of a roadmap for each of us. And that is so helpful in these times where things do feel really uncertain. It's helpful to know, especially having this kind of significant year and number associated with it ahead.
And we might meet some aliens.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can't wait for that follow-up.
love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here.